Hello, sir. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. You hear me okay?
Yep, you're all good.
All right. Excellent.
How
Cool,
you been?
man. Will you get me? I'm doing good. I took off today from work. I'm actually not sure. Can you see out that window?
Yes, I can.
We just built a lake house, and I'm in the lake house right now, and I'm doing some plumbing work and working on the house today. So you get me kind of not in my typical work environment, but nonetheless happy to chat with you.
Thanks. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Okay, so you want to start off? Let's dive right in. Okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
The first question is who are you and what do you do?
Hmm. Who am I, huh? So I'm probably going to give you more information than probably what you're asking for, but I think it's important to note that I don't. I think what we do and who we are sometimes not the same thing, right? Um, and we have a tendency, especially as men, to define ourselves by the work that we do. And not that it doesn't play a part in forming who I am, but I'd say what I do is not necessarily who I am. Um, so to answer your question, I'm a father of six kids. I was raised as a small town farm boy, and I'm an individual that is really focused on wanting to live a life without regret. That I want to be able to, when I finish life, know that I did a good job and feel okay about it, right? And not have remorse, and to leave a lasting impact in the lives of those that I love, so they don't ever question how valuable they were to me, and that I live a life worth living. So I'd say that's what defines me, or that's who I am. What I do, I'm a chief people officer. That's an executive position, and I'm over people and culture. So think of anything from systems and processes around employee performance, employee development, like the training of employees to get them to be able to do their jobs better, as well as leadership development to ensure that we have the right leaders within the organization. And then ultimately, even that kind of the fun stuff like employee recognition and awards, and playing an active part in ensuring that the culture that we have at our company is one where people not just get paid and make money, but they like enjoy their jobs, that they appreciate coming to work, and they like who they're working for, and they find fulfillment and purpose in the work that they're doing.
Man, that sounds like a pretty interesting field.
It is actually very interesting. And what's kind of even more interesting is my degree and my career has been all about technology. I've been a software developer for a number of years, ended up having my own business where I did business and IT consulting or technology consulting. And that's all I've done. And so it's kind of odd for me to be in the executive role that's over people, HR, and culture. It's a different twist for me, but it's a good alignment with what I think is valuable. So it's been fun.
Okay, so let's move on to the next question. What is your
Okay.
favorite part about working? Like what you do?
Hmm. People. People's my favorite part. I Even when I did consulting, it was my favorite part, right? The implementing a system is great, right? But implementing a system that benefits you or benefits people, and they're better off than they were before. That's kind of what I love, right? And so from a people and culture perspective, what I love more than anything else is this idea that not only do we have an environment where we help people have financial means, right, to provide for their families and to have good paying jobs. Like, that's great. But I even love the idea even more so that they love what they do, that they love coming to work, that they love the people that they're working with, and the idea that they are better off as people for working for the company. Like, it was a pivotal part in their life, and they're happy and they become better people by working with us.
That sounds very self-fulfilling for you to be able to say that you've been helping people do that.
Totally. And I think it's important, if you don't mind me suggesting, there's a big difference, maybe in your environment, right? There's a big difference between you doing something because you're being told to do it and you doing something because you want to do it, right?
Yeah.
And that's at the root of that, right? We don't want employees working hard because they have to, because their boss is telling them to. We want them to give their heart and their energy to the work that we do because they want to, through agency, right? Not through command and control or micromanagement or anything else.
Man, great answer. Thank you. Okay, so let's do the next question. What makes you different from other competitors?
Hmm. Yeah, so I'll talk about people and culture specifically. Well, let me talk about the company, and then I'll talk about people and culture. So the company, what makes us different than most other technology consulting firms is the skill set or the variety of all the technology that we specialize in is a lot for one company. Most companies do like part A, part B, part C. We do it all, right? So we can end up becoming like a one-stop shop for a client. The other thing that makes us different is we're premium. We're very expensive. Our clients don't choose us because we were cheaper. They choose us because they wanted the best. So we're very expensive, but they'll get the best consultants, right, when they go with us. So that's what identifies us as a company. What identifies our people and culture team is how we approach problems. And this is perfect because I think this is useful for you. If you want to grow muscle, what do you have to do?
Work out.
Work out. Growing of muscles on the other side of hardship, right? It's difficult. It muscle contraction and grind, and then it's through that you grow. And a lot of companies, when they address people issues, we address it from the perspective of making it comfortable for them. And we pander to them and not challenge them to address the issue. So for instance, typical company, let's say typical company A, employee has a problem with their boss, right? They go to HR and they say, hey, Kipp, I'm having a problem with my boss. And they're like, oh, okay, we'll talk to your boss for you and we'll get that all situated. That's how a normal company would probably address that issue. Us, if an employee comes to me and says, hey, Kipp, I'm having a problem with my boss. How do we handle this? And I go, how are you going to handle it? Because I'm not handling anything for you. I'll coach you. I'll challenge you. I'll give you some ideas, but you need to address the issue, not me. And it's through you addressing the issue that you grow and learn and strengthen your relationship with your boss. Where in other organizations, we pander to difficult circumstances. There's growth only through hardship and through the challenge. And we don't rescue our employees from those hardships. We support them in confronting them head on.
That sounds like you a lot of problems today are because people do stuff for other people and they don't have to do it. So that
Yeah,
sounds like you're trying to solve the problem.
totally. Well, and we live in a world that everyone wants Everybody is constantly seeking to make things easier, right? We get a job so it's an easier life. We do these things so it's easier. As parents, sometimes we go, well, I want to make a lot of money so life is easier for my kids. But it's out of naiveness that we do that, because it's actually not where fulfillment and growth comes from. Fulfillment and growth, if we use the analogy of working out, doesn't come from sitting on the couch and doing nothing. Fulfillment and growth comes from doing what? Going to the gym and doing something hard. And that's where we find fulfillment and growth.
Man, so such great wisdom coming from you right now. So, what are you working on now for
What am I working on?
your, yeah,
Yes. So one thing that I'm really like having a blast with right now is how do we let me predicate on this. A lot of people are victims. Most people are victims. They won't say they're a victim, but they are. And so let's make that distinction really quick. What makes someone a victim? When my state of being is outside of my realm of control. My job is difficult. Why? Oh, it's because of my boss, right? Life is difficult. Why? Because of my parents are being jerks to me, right? Oh, I have a hard time at school. Why? Because the teacher, because of this, because of this. It's always someone else's acting upon me. That's a form of victimhood. And the opposite of that is you taking ownership, right? And we get this even in the corporate environment, in the work setting, is where people have a victim mindset. This project is going bad. Why? Oh, because of the client, because of the project manager, because of the right? And if we're not careful as leaders, we perpetuate a victim mindset based upon how I interact with you. So let me give you a perfect example. Your dad comes to you and says, you need to get your room clean. This is why it's important and everything else, right? Okay.
yeah.
Now, he comes home tomorrow and your room is thrashed. Your dad has two choices. He actually has a couple of choices. But in most cases, and I'm not projecting on your dad here, but I wish just pretend. Most parents go persecutor, right? They yell, they might get angry or whatever and say, hey, gee, you got to clean your room. I'm tired of this crap and whatever, right? And you'll clean the room. But you clean the room, why? Out of choice? Not really.
No.
You clean the room because out of persecution, because he was commanding it. And we do that at work. Employees, they don't do what they should do, and we persecute them, which keeps you in a victim mindset. Why? Because you didn't clean your room out of agency. You cleaned your room out of control, right? Now, the flip side to that, and I'm projecting on you what my wife does, is if that was mom that comes home and goes, why is your room clean? Oh, it's okay, honey. And then she'll sweep in and she'll clean the room with the kids. The room got clean. Why? Because you chose to, or because mom rescued you and saved you from the hardship of cleaning your own room, which prevents you from growing. Because you didn't have to do it by yourself. Someone did it for you. And we do this at work. We rescue our people and we persecute them. And so something I'm working on right now is a leadership framework around that concept that as leaders, we can never show up as persecutors and rescuers. Otherwise, we perpetuate our employees from being victims. And when you're a victim, you don't grow. And we got to stop that. So I'm working on some leadership development content to really flip this script around how do we show up as leaders to empower our people through agency and choice. That was maybe a little out there, but it's, I don't know, it's what I'm working on.
Yeah, that seems like a good thing to be working on, like how to train people to do what they need to do without being controlled or rescued.
Totally. There's a big difference when you choose to clean your room because you want to versus you cleaning the room because you're being told to.
At the end of the day, you feel much better about yourself if you chose to clean your room than if somebody
Totally.
had to yell at you to clean your room.
Totally. And often if you're only cleaning your room because someone's kind of going to get angry at you, in most cases, that's where people take shortcuts too, right? We shove stuff under the bed and we like, you know what I mean? We do it not the way it was meant to be done, but we do it enough so we don't get in trouble, right? And so even not only does it feel better for you, but the quality of the work is diminished when you don't do it out of agency.
Okay, so the next question is, what would you want to see in a young person that wanted to work for you?
That's a good question. It's really interesting because I think that a lot of young people, they get tied to it's this degree that I get, it's this class that I complete, it's this certification. If I have those things, then I will be a good employee. And the reality of it is, if I had two new hires, two new employees in front of me, and the one had the right mindset and work ethic, and the other one had all the skills, I would choose the one with the correct mindset and work ethic over the skilled individual any day. So what does that mean? The ability to have delayed gratification. This idea that like, hey, I'm going to work hard and they won't give up. And they will grind it out and find it and figure it out. So strong work ethic or the ability to have delayed gratification. Humility is huge. Far too often. It's probably the number one thing that blocks people from being successful, at least in my career, is they're so concerned about what people think that they're unwilling to raise their hand and say, I don't understand this. And then they never learn because they never ask for help because they don't want to be found out that they don't know. So I would say work ethic. I would say humility is critical. And then also self-awareness or emotional intelligence. They need to understand that, and they need to be self-aware around how they show up in the world and how that affects other people. And the reason why is because once you have humility, the ability and the willingness to work hard, and you're self-aware, anything's possible, because that means you can grow. You're humble enough to grow. You're self-aware enough to grow. Like, you will progress as a person if you have those traits. But you can be as smart as like the most smartest person in the room. But if you're not humble, you're not growing. If you don't have work ethic, you're not even get things done, right? And if you're self-aware or not self-aware, you're going around burning bridges and no one likes working with you and you have no idea, right? And so I think those are the key things that I would say are the most critical.
My dad, he coached a basketball team at one point, and he says to me often, quite often, that he often chose the people that worked harder over the people that were more naturally skilled.
Totally. And that's so critical from your dad's perspective, because guess what? Eventually, talent won't be enough. Even the kids that are highly talented, eventually, the people that put in the reps, right? The people willing to do the hard work, they will win, right? They will be better than others because their willingness to do the hard work.
Man, such wisdom coming from you right now. Thank you so much. I appreciate this so much. Okay, what skills have helped you most in becoming the man you are today?
Hmm. I would say first the idea. Well, to be frank, it's the things that I just talked about. I think my work ethic was one of my gifts from my dad. And I don't say this like this is true. It's like really true. I know no one in my entire life that worked harder than he did. No one. I don't even work as hard as he worked. And that was kind of his gift to me is work ethic. I can work just as hard as anybody else, right? I will grind out seriously. And that was his gift. So I think work ethic has played a major part in my life. I think my willingness and my self-awareness around how I show up in the world has been critical. Let me explain that just really quick for you. People will say, do you have skill, right? Do you have knowledge and the ability to do something? That's one thing, right?
Yeah.
And then we'll assume that next thing that you need to do is give it effort or work ethic. And then you should be good to go, right? And the answer is there's a third measure. And the third measure is the impact you have on those around you. It is totally possible for me to be highly skilled, for me to work really hard, but no one wants to work with me because my impact on them is negative. So it's always about skill, effort, and then the impact that we have. Okay. So, and that impact requires self-awareness. So I'd say work ethic, my self-awareness, and then probably the last thing that I think is probably my quote unquote superpower, if you want to use that term, is I'm passionate about the things I do. So it's not I'm being manipulative. I'm really like kind of passionate about it, and that comes through in my communication. So as a leader, that has benefited me a lot because our employees can get behind me, right? They get excited about whatever I'm excited about because I'm able to communicate in a way that inspires them about what we're doing as an organization.
Yes, that's if you can put like the same fire in other people that you have, the passion in other people that work for you, then you are pretty well set up to do something in life.
I think so too, and I think and you can't fake it, right? Like you can have tactics around it. You can go, hey, I want to communicate in a very powerful way, and I should say the right things. But almost think of it this way. I'm sure you've had this experience before, where some of the best teachers that I've ever had, it wasn't what they were teaching, it's how they were teaching. Right? They were excited about their subject, so I cared about it. But it wasn't like the text in the book that got me all excited. It was how they delivered it, right? How they presented it. And that's part of like them sharing themselves about what they're inspired about.
Yes, that I have experienced that with like the boring teachers, even if it's like the best subject that like you're so interested in it, if it's the boring teacher,
Yeah. Yeah, it's the facilitator that really it's the facilitator and the teacher that really makes it exciting, right? Not really so much the content. Yeah.
So are you good for another question?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Okay. What advice? Oh, sorry. What made you go into your field of work?
That's interesting. So I would say my field of work has changed. I've had two primary pivots. So um, I went to school, out of high school, I started studying general business, and I took a class on computer programming, and I built my first program. And I switched my degree to computer science because of that. It's actually not computer science. It's actually computer information systems is what it was called, a CIS degree. And I switched because I had so much fun making that app, right? Like I was like, that's awesome. Like I made this thing, I created it, and I was super excited about it. And so I switched my degree to computer information systems, and that's how it got started, just because I loved making something and having it be used, right? There's this huge benefit to that. And I wanted a job. My dad was a coal miner, a butcher, and a farmer. And I saw him hurt his body, to be honest. He was broken. He passed away a year and a half ago, and he seemed much older than he really was. And it's just because it's hard work. And so I always had this idea when I was a kid that I was like, I want the job that I can sit in a chair, right, and make good money and use my brain, and I don't have to like hurt my body, right? And so I know that doesn't, not a lot of logic went into that, other than just I wanted a soft office job. But computer science was because of the creation of programming, of creation of programs, I should say. And then over the past year and a half, really is all it's been. I've switched to that people and culture role, right? That leadership role around employee development. And the reason for that switch is I think it's the bigger level of impact, right? Like, we talked earlier, I want to live a life worth living, right? I want to live a life without regret. I want to leave a lasting impact. Well, how do you leave impact in the world? It's through people, not systems, right? No one's ever going to go, oh my gosh, Kipp's legacy is so great. He helped us implement this software that made us save money, right? Like, that's not invaluable, right? But it's like, man, Kipp's impact on me was positive. Why? Because I'm a better person because of them, right? I'm a better person where I learned things because of him. And so that switch for me to people and culture was rooted in the idea that it's the bigger game, right? And the game of trying to help people.
So you mentioned software and like programming and stuff. I've done a little bit of programming. It got a little intense though, and I didn't really understand it. But at the beginning, it was like I just remember creating my first animation. It was like a simple pink car just driving across the grass. It felt so good. It's so fun
Yeah,
just creating stuff.
yeah, super awesome. Well, and what's interesting about that, if you don't mind me suggesting, not that you need to know the backstory of this, but there's this concept, if you look it up, it's called Bloom's taxonomy. And Bloom's taxonomy is the levels by which we learn. And at the bottom of that triangle is understanding and memorization, right? Read a book, memorize it, take a test. At the top of that triangle is what? Creation. It's the highest level of knowledge is actually in creation. And I think that's why when we create things, like you create that graphic, or I create a program, or even I create concepts, new ideas in my mind, we're excited about them, because that's the ultimate like example of what it means to be human, is to create. And it's awesome.
Yeah, we were put here to create stuff, so we might as well, right?
Yeah, totally. And we're capable of it, right?
Yeah. So next question. First, are you good on time or
Yeah,
when's your
you're
cutoff
just
point?
saving me from having to work, so I'm okay taking a break. So
Okay. So what separates you from other men?
it separates me from other men. I don't know, actually. I mean, I think maybe unique traits that I have that not, other men may or may not have. I mean, it depends on the men that you surround yourself with, right? When I think about the men that I surround myself in my life, um, we're pretty much aligned in many ways. But
Yeah.
maybe some things that might make me a little bit more unique is my empathy. Um, it's something that is I connect to a lot, and so maybe said another way, like I really try to genuinely understand people and not pass judgment, right? That when someone does something that most people would immediately judge and get mad at, my natural tendency is to pause and go, that there's a lot that I don't understand, and there's probably reasons for them showing up in the world in the way that they do, and who am I to pretend that I understand them, So I would say that's probably one of my, I don't know if you want to call it my superpowers or defining traits is my willingness to think deeper, and critically think about people and be a little bit slower to judge them.
I have trouble not judging people, but afterwards, sometimes if I think about it, I'm like, oh, well, that was stupid of me to do that. Like, because
Totally.
blah 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 happened to them just this morning and they're in a bad mood.
Totally.
So
Well, and one thing that I've always liked, and it's true, it's a way of thinking, right? It's not true. But think of someone that maybe makes you upset, for instance, or has offended you or even hurt you. It's always powerful to think that if I were them and I was raised by their parents, if I experienced the things they experienced, I would have done the same thing they did. And so much of people's actions are based upon conditions and many other factors that we're no better than they are. If anything, we just should be blessed and grateful for how we were raised, right? And what opportunities we had, that they may not have had. The last thing that I think is powerful is there's a strong distinction between what happened versus our interpretation of it. And they're not the same thing. And people go around the world most suffering or frustration and anger and those kind of things are not in what happened. They're actually in what we decided to make it mean. And it's
I
important that we separate those two things constantly.
I was just yesterday, actually, I was listening to a podcast with my dad in the car as we drove to baseball. And the guy was talking about how our past affects how we see the present, but we control how our past affects the present. And that
Totally.
just hit me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's profound, right? Totally profound.
So the next, as long as like, what's your hard cutoff point here for time?
I'm good for another 5. Is that okay? 5 to 10 minutes?
Yeah, okay. That
Okay.
works for me. So I went and looked at your Instagram page just to
Okay.
research you a little bit, and I saw you did jujitsu. So, what is your favorite part of jujitsu?
I could write a book on this subject. Um, my favorite part about jujitsu is the correlations that show up in jujitsu that correlate to life. The lessons of jujitsu are life lessons. And it's not surprising. The older I get, this sounds like an old man thing to say. The older I get, truth is truth, and it shows up everywhere, right? Sometimes there's different labels. People call it different things, but truths are transcendent to many things. And I think for jujitsu, I see those correlations of life showing up in jujitsu all the time. And it's just another way to grow mentally as well as, physical fitness. But don't get me wrong, like the biggest benefits are of the mental benefits that come from jujitsu. As an example, our interpretation versus reality. Most people who train for the first time, think about it. Most grown men have never had has never had hands placed on them, where another grown adult is trying to control them. Most people don't know what that feels like. And new guys, when they show up in the mats, you'll get people tapping for no reason. They'll be like, oh, tap, 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 because they feel so uncomfortable because they're being pinned and they can't move and they're freaking out. And it's interesting. Why are they freaking out? Are they okay? Yeah, they're okay. But their head is saying they're not, right? So what is happening versus their interpretation, right? They're thinking it's the same thing, right? And so they're freaking out. And so the ability to be comfortable in the uncomfortable, the ability to be calm, I should say, the ability to be calm in the uncomfortable is probably one of the greatest lessons of jiu-jitsu, as well as humility, right? It's a very hard pill to swallow, knowing, think of it this way, and it's so savage, it's so primal. You and one other kid could have a one-on-one basketball game, right? And you could lose the game. What's the level up from that game? Yeah, you could beat me on the basketball court, but I can beat you at math, right? It's like, oh, okay. Or, oh, you could beat me at basketball, but I'm smarter than you, or I have a better job than you, or whatever. But the most fundamental way of beating someone else is through physical confrontation. You can have a better job than me. You can have everything but me. But guess what? I can beat you up. And that is a hard pill to swallow when you get on a mat and you go, that guy over there, doesn't matter how smart I am, doesn't matter how cool I am, how much people think how awesome I am. None of that matters. That guy over there can kick my butt. And theoretically could kill me if he wanted to. And there's nothing I can do about it. That crushes the ego in a very serious way. And so that dealing with that, right? That level of humility is a superpower, I think, in jiu-jitsu.
Man, that's seriously like some ego crushing stuff right there.
Oh,
Like,
and that's why I think it's 80% of people who start jiu-jitsu quit because they can't handle it, to be frank. They can't handle this idea. Because think about it. How do people know they're tough? The way I
because
dress, the way I walk, the way I talk, the music I listen to, and they think those things make them tough. All of that is a charade, right? And
yeah.
some people don't want to face the music and go, actually, I'm not tough. I'm a pansy and I'm afraid, and I can't actually prevent someone smaller than me from hurting me. That sucks, right? And most people don't want to confront that.
But yeah, so I have not done any martial arts. I did when I was like 3, but it wasn't any like confrontation. It was like you practice punching and kicking.
Yeah,
So yeah.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I've
I'm a huge advocate. Obviously, I think everyone should do jujitsu, but it's tough, and it's not a oh, I'm going to go there and I'm going to be tough, right? It's I'm going to go there and I'm going to be humbled, and I'm going to figure out how I keep going, even though I don't want to go. And it's through that process that we grow, right?
Yeah, I'm considering starting jiu-jitsu sometime, but I unfortunately not this year because I have sports loaded into my whole thing. So,
Yeah.
but yeah. So this next question will be the last, and this has nothing to do with business. I'm just curious. So
Okay.
I love listening to music. What kind of music do you like listening to?
Yeah. Well, it's changed over the years, right? So, and it depends on what I'm doing. So, I sometimes like at the gym, if I'm working out or going for a run, like kind of like a techno kind of beat music.
Yeah.
Like, have you heard of like RJD2,
I
Ghost Rider? Anyhow, so kind of like a beat, like just a kind of a rhythm.
yeah.
I like that kind of music. Um, I like old school. I like my old school. Like, I mean, I think I mentioned this on the podcast with Matt, right? That and you guys like, I do like '80s hip hop and '90s hip hop. Although I don't listen to it very often because it's a bad message. But I don't know. Like I don't know. Like I like when I'm here at the lake, I like listen to reggae. and Jack Johnson and kind of like Hawaiian vibe. You know what I mean? Chill
Yeah.
music. And I love oldies. I love the 50s and the 60s. I was raised on my parents listen to oldies. I know oldies do use like 80s, but like 50s and 60s oldies I used to listen to as a kid. And those always kind of lift up my spirits. So I love that. I pretty much listen to everything. Probably not too much country. I don't know why country never really resonated with me, but there is some country artists that like kind of rap.
Yeah. Yeah. I like
And I
that.
kind of dig that actually a little bit, but I don't know. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah. I love music. I listen to like everything rock, country, pop, everything.
Yeah. Man, I love like my playlist right now. It's like I have a playlist called Fun, and
Yeah.
it's like Men Down Under, and it's like, you know, like I don't know, like kind of that poppy fun music from the 90s that I listen to sometimes. So I don't know. I like everything usually.
Okay. So that is my last question. But first, before we leave, I want to have everybody who's watching know where to find you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where to find me. So I mean, probably just Instagram for the most part is good. It's my name at Kipp Sorensen, KippSorensen. Yeah, that's probably the best way. And it's probably good for me too, right? Because I need to stop. I don't think I swear too much on there. So I need to do a better job. A better example, right?
Yeah. I don't know, but during the Matt's podcast thing every Friday,
Yeah.
I personally haven't heard one yet, but apparently some of like the Navy SEALs are like swearing up a storm on there.
Sailors. Yeah. Yeah. I and it's I mean it's not it's kind of funny, right? Swear words are kind of like those funny things. It's like they're sounds, right? And then we
Yeah.
have a cultural agreement that that's not a good word, right? It's
Yeah.
interesting if you digest the power of language. You know, language is sounds that represent things, and sometimes they represent things that only exist in language. Have you ever thought about that? So, for
True.
instance, show me orange. Where's orange? Or
Uh,
no, better yet, show me color. Yeah,
Lots of
just
things all around me.
it's a word that represents something that we've agreed upon,
Yeah.
right? It's very interesting language. But yeah, anyhow, I need to do a better job. I'm hopefully I'm not as bad as those Navy SEALs. So
Uh, I don't think you are. I don't think you are. But
okay.
I just want to thank you for meeting me here. I want to thank you for taking a chunk out of your day to do this with me and talking to me and answering the questions. Just you're a great guy. Thanks.
Yeah, no, it's fun, right? And it's good. Like it's good for us to have kind of conversations around what's important. So it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, goodbye, Mr. Sorensen. I hope you have a good rest of the day.
All right. Thank you. And hey, once you get wrapped up with those sports, talk to your dad. Get some
Okay.
mat time in. For you. Okay.
Okay.
Talk to you later.
You too.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.